How the weeks go by before I know it, it's Tuesday. To Meira and to Aryeh, and whoever's going to join us online. Of course, my mother watches every week, and David and Katie for the next few weeks won't be watching live, but watch afterwards. V'ezrat Hashem and Avital and everybody else that I don't know who watches. Shalom Aleichem, I guess there's Chaya and Carlos and a whole bunch of people watch afterwards. V'ezrat Hashem. And there's always the people that just don't tell me anything. I went to visit my daughter Eliana, who's studying in Cholon, in a boarding school in Cholon. I was pretty impressed. Took me an hour and a half door to door to get there, an hour and a half to get back. Very efficient. And as I'm waiting at the light rail, Shalom to Yael, I didn't see you before. As I'm waiting at the light rail, this, 15-year-old young kid with red hair and a Yechi kippah, Chabad kippah, flies by on his very fancy electric scooter, comes back around, looks at me and says, "Hey, I like your stories," and then takes off.
Oh, wow.
This happens to me regularly. It's really funny, but whenever it happens, you never know. So, there's people that listen to the podcast. I don't know they listen to the podcast until they tell me, "Hey, I like your stories." Okay, so Shalom Aleichem to everyone. That was the introduction to everyone that's going to watch. So we're starting a new lesson now. This is Ayin Vav 76. And my plan is just to go through this whole volume here, because even though these Torahs are a little longer than the future ones, at some point they're going to get quite short, and then it's going to bring us eventually to a Zamra, which we'll probably do a Zamra again, because Rebbe Nachman said, that'll be by the time we get through all of this, so it'll be maybe a year or so. Rebbe Nachman said, a Zamra is all of my teachings encompassed in one Torah. So first I have a little outline of the whole lesson here, which I think I'll go over briefly before we get too deep into it, but first we'll start with the introduction. Rabbeinu Zan poteach bepasuk hapoteach et parashat Akedat Yitzchak. So Rebbe Nachman starts us off with a verse that comes from the Akedah, the binding of Yitzchak. V'hi Achar HaDevarim HaEileh ve'Elokim nisat Avraham. And it was after these things passed that Hashem tested Avraham. B'sof Torah yivaer et haramuz b'pasuk zeh. And at the end of the Torah, we're going to understand the meaning behind this. Well, we're going to understand the meaning before we get to the end of the Torah, because I'm going to give you the end. At the beginning, there was this movie, When Harry Met Sally, which was a big movie when I was younger. And one of the things that the main character Harry would do is he would always read the end of the book just in case he didn't live to the end. Always, start the book with the ending so you know how it ends in case you don't live to the end. I often eat dessert on Friday night because I don't eat sugar during the week. So when Friday night comes, I'm like, dessert time. And the kids are like, why are you eating dessert right in the beginning of the meal? I said, well, you never know. We might not make it to the end of the meal. So got to eat dessert now. So I'll give you the end in just a minute. But first, there's an introduction here. Really, Ari and Meir, you have to get the set. If I remember it, I would get you the set, but I don't remember. Torah zu hi milashon haChaverim. So this Torah is from the Chaverim, which is a whole set of Torahs that we're learning now. V'lo nimtzar lanu zman umakom amirat Torah zo. We don't know what time and place it was said. Ve'af shemeronat lo asa leTorah zo me'adora nosefet. And even though Rebbe Nachman, Rebbe Nachman didn't make a separate version of this, which is what we were learning before, mikol makom harbe lichtov aleha beorim besogayim merubaim. And however, he added in every paragraph, basically, squared brackets, and that's his explanation of what the Hasidim said. Likutey Halachot but al Torah zo, in the Likutey Halachot regarding this Torah, Katav me'onat v'zelashono. This is what Rebbe Nachman wrote. Torah azot himel shol haChaverim shelo nichtava yefeh klal. This Torah was given over by the Hasidim, and it wasn't given over in a very good way at all. Afan pichen hamedakdek u'ma'anyen ba yimtza gam sham hakdamot v'chidushim niflaim. But somebody who takes the time and goes through it carefully will find in this Torah many new and wondrous ideas. Ki kol dibor v'dibor sheyatza mipiv Rabbeinu zichrono livracha, because every single word that came out of Rebbe Nachman's holy mouth, a blessed memory, amok v'nora ma'od, is deep and mamash exalted. V'ikar hakoshi b'Torah zo hi behavanat kishrei hadverim. And the difficulty in this Torah is understanding the connection between all of the parts, which is what I'm going to give you. I think we'll read Aleph, and then I'll go over the whole thing. We'll start with the introduction here. So we said, so it was after all of these things, all of the tests that Abraham went through. He went through the circumcision, he went through everything, right? He went through the circumcision before. And the Akedah was the last test of Abraham. I'm not sure, don't remember. But Abraham had 10 tests. Now, each time he went up a higher spiritual level, he got tested again. And in a sense, that's the essence of the lesson, that there's Chaya, Shalom Aleichem. That we go, the higher we go, the more Hashem tests us. So a person could say, well, I'm not going to go any higher, so you'll be tested where you are. You're just going to be tested no matter what. Umakdim, it's brought. Ita muva b'tikunei hazohar. It's brought in the Zohar, tikunei hazohar. Mitzad hayamin hamoach levan kesef. On the right side, the mind is white like silver. V'zeu shene'amar, and this is what it said. Zera Avraham oavi. The seed of Avraham is my beloved. Nimsa she'Avraham hu midat ahava. We know that Avraham is the attribute of love. Zachal shleimut hagdalat hamochim. He merited to completeness by having an expanded consciousness. U'Torah zo yive'er Rabbeinu ketzad. And in this Torah, Rebbe Nachman is going to explain how. Shalom Aleichem to Avraham ben Elisheva. So, what's the expanded consciousness when a person is tested? To know that Hashem is testing them, and not just to think that they're going through a test, but to know that there's always someone, there's always Hashem above and behind and inside. Hashem is there in every way, and that's how Avraham became the seed of Avraham, the children of Avraham became Hashem's beloved, because Avraham, also Avraham was the attribute of love, but Avraham reached the place where he was able to see Hashem's love in all of the difficulties in life. Yiva'er inyan hari'ah be'or yashar ve'or chazer. So now he's going to give us a kind of scientific medical explanation of vision. But he's going to use this as a metaphor for our relationship with Hashem. And that's what Rebbe Nachman wrote here, that the main problem with this Torah is understanding the connection between the things, because Rebbe Nachman gives, or it's really the Hasidim that are giving over their understanding of how Rebbe Nachman said this. He's talking about seeing and different ways of seeing, and you look like this and look like that and see things in that way. But really it's all bless you. But really it's all a metaphor. So had Rebbe Nachman started off and said this is all a metaphor, and we're going to look for the meaning of the metaphor and reading the scientific understanding of seeing, that would have cleared everything up from the beginning. But you have to read through the whole Torah and use your brain a bit to understand that, because he doesn't just lay it out for us. Hine beistaklut shel ha'ayin v'asechel. So now we're going to look at how the eye and the mind see. There's a direct light and there's a reflected light, a returning light. The spreading out of vision, that's the power of vision that comes out from the eye. That's the direct light. And this, in the light reaches, so I want to see the clock. In my eye, there's light, like there's a light going out, then the clock is being reflected back, and then the mind is interpreting what the eye is seeing. That's what he's saying here. So the eye has this power to see what I decide that I want to see. So obviously if I'm looking there, I'm not looking over there, but if I look over here and I'm not looking over there, so it has the power to do this. So when I look, what I'm doing is I'm sending out light, the light is returning to my eye, and that's the returning light. And now the brackets of Rebbe Nachman. Ki ikar koach hareut mechimat shekoach hareut holech umitpashet umakeh b'davar hanir'eh. What is the power of seeing? It's because the power of seeing goes out and spreads out, it hits the object and returns. V'chozer koach hareut mechimat ha'aka'ah le'einayim. And the power of seeing returns because the light that goes out from the eye is reflected back into the eye. V'nitzta'er hadavar be'einayim. And then whatever we're looking at is illustrated or drawn, created in the eye. V'az ha'einayim ro'in et hadavar hanir'eh. And then the eyes are able to see the thing which is seen. As explained very well in a different part of the Likutey Moharan, Siman Yud Gimel Ot Daled, Torah 13, section 4. Nimtza, it follows, Sheyesh B'koach Hareut B'bchinat Or Yashar V'Or Chozer. So in the power of seeing, we have a light that goes out and a light that returns. Ki koach hitpashtut hareut me einav la'adavar hanir'eh, the power of the light spreading out from the eye to a physical object that we want to see. Zeh b'chinat or yashar. This is the direct light. Va'ka'at hareut b'davar hanir'eh, and then the hitting of the object with the vision of the thing that we want to see. Ve'al yedei zeh chozer hadavar le'einav v'nitzte'er be'einav. And then the light returns to the eyes, and the mind is able to interpret what the eyes see. And that's the returning light. And this is how seeing works. It's how vision works. Kanal is mentioned above. And this is what we mean, that there's a returning light, that the light that's sent out from the eye returns to the eye. The mind interprets it, and that's what we mentioned above. So that's the end of the quote from Rebbe Nachman. Hashem Yitbarach, Baruch Hu, and Hashem blessed is He, Af she'eino nitpas b'shum midah, even though we're not able to grasp Hashem in any way whatsoever, Ubevadai Ei Efshar Leta'er at Re'iyato V'Yediato B'Nusag Enoshi, and of course we can't ever describe how Hashem looks or know Hashem in a human way of understanding. Ach kedei l'saber ha'ozen shetuchal la'avin b'mehi yechola lishmoa. But in order to, I'm not sure, I guess to make the ear capable of hearing something, of understanding what what he's saying is that even though can't see and can't understand Hashem, still we want to try to understand Hashem, so we're going to have some means of grasping Hashem. V'ne'amar bo gamken, and it said about this as well in Tehillim, ki ram Hashem v'shafan yir'eh v'gavoa memerchak yeda. That even though Hashem is exalted, Hashem is great and over all of the world, still he sees the lowest things and he sees the highest things from a great distance and knows what's going on. Bi'or pasuk, in explaining this verse, Yir'eh, Hashem sees, Ubechinat or yashar. This is the direct light. Memerchak yeda, from a distance he knows, Ubechinat or chozer. This is the returning light. And now with Rebbe Nachman's explanation, Ki ikar hayedi'ah leda ma shero'eh. What is the main attribute of knowing? Is knowing what you're seeing. Hu al yedei b'bchinat o chozer. And this comes about through the returning light. Because if the eye can see, but the mind is not connected to it, then the eye is seeing, but the returning light is not coming back to the mind. Now, if you think about it, you can see what he's trying to say. He's talking about our relationship with Hashem. So we cry out to Hashem. We say, Hashem, why this and why that? Why are you doing this and why are you doing that? That's the direct light. That's the light that's coming out of the eye. But when we get the returning light, we have a grasping of understanding Hashem. Even though when I see the clock, or I see the bottle, I'm not actually seeing the bottle because the bottle is a physical thing that's here. It's my mind that's interpreting the light that's reflecting off of the physical object. Even though I'm so used to it because my whole life I've seen a bottle and I say that's the bottle, until I actually touch it, it's not the bottle. So picture a blind person. We have a friend who used to come to this class, Ellie, who was basically born blind. He can't see the bottle, but when he touches the bottle, he feels it, it's real for him. So he doesn't have the ability to see physically, but he can still interact with the object. So what we're trying to do is he's using this analogy for saying, okay, we started off with Abraham was tested. After all the things that went through his life, then he was tested. And then he takes like a break and he says, okay, let's talk about vision. What is vision? Vision is light going out and light coming back. Vision is us being tested and asking Hashem, what are you doing? And when we know this idea that our prayers go out, our words go out, and Hashem returns the light by giving us some type of vision of seeing what Hashem is giving us, even though the vision is not the actual object itself, it gives us an ability to see something that we couldn't see otherwise. That's the point he's trying to make here. Ki ikar hayedi'ah leda ma shero'eh. What is the main idea of knowing? Is knowing what you see. V'hu al yedei b'bchinat or chozer. And this comes about when the light returns. Shehi b'chinat ma shechozer hakoach hareut le'enav. This is the aspect of the power of the seeing returning to a person's eyes. Sometimes somebody can see something directly, literally with their eyes. Nonetheless, a person doesn't know what they're looking at. So we've all had this. Either something that's up close, something that goes by fast, something at a distance, or sometimes, there are these optical illusions. Do you see the woman's face or the man's face? Do you see the elephant or the bird, or that type of thing? Depending on the type of person you are and how your brain works, whether you're right or left-brained, and whatever, that type of stuff. This is what you'll see, and it's a known thing that some people see this and some people see that. So he says, even if you see something, you might not actually understand what you're seeing. Kagon. For example, כשמעבירים איזה דבר לפני עיניו במהירות גדול. So we take something and we quickly pass an object across a person's face, catching animals. Okay. She's impressed with your manliness. There you go. So an object flies by very quickly. So on the screen it catches it, but my eyes don't really catch it if I go by quickly like that. So even though the eyes saw something, it doesn't understand it. Meaning, even though we saw something happen in our life, and we're sure that the meaning behind it is X, Y, Z, we didn't really see it. Because we only got part of the picture. And we've all had that in our lifetime. I hope, I'm assuming everybody's had in their lifetime, that things happen to people, and at the time they didn't understand why it happened to them. And eventually, there was something that explained why it happened. And this happens to me all the time. To the point where when like big things, big bumps in the road come, I always say, I know there's a reason behind it, I just don't know the reason yet, but it's going to be revealed to me, and I'm always looking for the reason. And then when the reason reveals itself to me, it's very clear. So that's a certain type of consciousness. If you're looking at the world in that way, then you will see meaning in places that other people don't. And not necessarily, you don't have to see meaning in someone else's life, in your own life. But somebody else who's challenged with their challenges, if they don't have this idea that when you see something, first it's the light going out, and then it's the light coming back, and the object that you're seeing is not actually the object, it's how you describe the object in your mind, then you use that same analogy for a relationship with Hashem, because we started off with the verse, and Hashem tested Avraham. So when you're tested, know that you're not going to get a clear picture, but you can get a better picture when you ask Hashem, you cry out to Hashem. Okay, שבחינת מה שחזר כוח ראות, ועל כן לפעמים האדם רואה איזה דבר בעיניו ממש, ואף על פי כן אינו יודע מה הוא רואה. For example, so that's what we had before. Somebody can literally see something before their eyes and they don't know what they see. And also you have that, in law cases where you bring in witnesses and they say, did you see this? And they say, yes. Describe it exactly. They describe it exactly, and then they bring in some footage that completely contradicts what they saw. And the person says, but I'm sure I know what I saw. They say, you know what you saw, but the video saw what you didn't see. So we know it's a known thing. And what he's saying is the same thing happens to us. We say, we know why I'm suffering from this thing or that thing, but we don't really know why. Until Hashem makes it clear to us, we don't know why. So sometimes we have this object that passes very quickly in front of our eyes. And this is because it didn't have the... I should have looked up the word panai. Yeah, if you're listening, what's the word panai?
Free, meaning
that's what I wanted to say, but it doesn't fit in the context here. I guess the person wasn't ready. That's what it means. The person wasn't ready. So if I say to you, I'm going to put something really fast in front of your eyes, watch it right now, you might try to catch what I'm moving. But if it just comes like this, you don't see it. That's the meaning of it. So then a person is going to try to figure out in their mind what they saw and piece it together. As is mentioned in the Torah, in another Torah, and we'll read what it says there. So it follows that what is knowing, it's knowing what a person sees, and this is only the light that returns. The returning light is already when the brain is computating what it saw. The eye has the physical ability to see something, so we know that we can take an eye. I don't know if you can actually take a whole eye, but you can take a cornea, and you can put it in somebody's body. I'm assuming that the eye, and even, like say somebody just died and they want to take the eye still sees. If they're able to keep it healthy, it still sees, but it doesn't have a brain connected to it, so it's not registering what it sees. Okay, what's written in Samechei? Sham katav v'zeleshono, and there it says, Ikar ha're'ah hiya yedi'ah. What is the main idea of seeing? It's knowing. Dahainu leda mahut hadavar shero'eh. You have to know what you're seeing. So, for example, I guess a person could see something. Oh, I had this with some of my kids that were vaping. Okay, when I first discovered the first vape, I didn't know what it was. Neither Nogar I had any idea what it was. We're looking at it, we're turning it around. It has a C charger in it, but what in the world is it? We couldn't figure it out. Okay, so then eventually we called that kid and said, what is this? And they said, oh, you found it? Yes, found it. That's my vape. Really? How does it work? You stick the thing in here, you charge it there, it works like this. Okay. So here we were both seeing something, but we didn't know what it was. And what can I say? That's teenagers these days and up, even from my home, and more. It's not easy to be a parent. I have some friends that their kids are like these really quiet nerds. Like they could never cause trouble. And I say to the father, well, you're lucky to have a whole family of nerds. He's like, you know the trouble they cause? Like, your kid's causing trouble? I guess that's just how it goes. So we see something we don't understand, but when we do understand it, the understanding is in the mind, even though the eyes saw the thing. When the mind wants to understand what it's seeing in front of it, I'm reading from the footnotes that you don't have. Azai usholeach et hareut. So then the mind sends out the vision in order to try to understand it. V'hareut holech v'ro'eh hadavar. The vision goes and sees the thing. Hamevi'o letoch hamoach, and then brings that vision into the mind. V'azai yodea mashu ro'eh, and the person understands what they're seeing. You understand this analogy? The analogy is, Hashem gives us things, we see it, we don't understand it. But when the mind wants to see it, it'll look at it a second time, or a third time, or 100th time, and then it'll start to understand what it saw, but didn't process. That's the analogy that he's giving us here. That we will be tested, we won't understand it. But if a person wants to understand it, they'll look at it in different ways until they do understand it. Al ken shema'avirim devar lefnei adam b'meirut gadol. So when you pass something quickly in front of someone's eyes, eino yodea mahut devar. The person doesn't know what you passed in front of their eyes. Af shebe'emet ra'a devar be'inav mamish. Even though their eyes literally saw this thing. Im kol ze mechimat hameirut. Nonetheless, because of the quickness of passing the object in front of someone's eyes, the person wasn't online, in a sense, in order to bring what they saw into their mind. And so it is also when something is very far from a person. The mind doesn't have the energy to go to there and bring it into the mind. Meaning, sometimes things happen to us that are also, in a sense, far away, and we don't have the energy to process it and figure out why would Hashem want to do this to us. So, if a person wants to see something way, way in the distance, it's very hard to see because all of the other things around them are confusing the person. The same way, in us trying to understand why Hashem would do something to or for us, it's always for us. All the to is always for us. The reason that we don't have the energy, that's another thing that you hear from kids. En li koch. I don't have any energy. Take out the garbage. Nah, en li koch. Do this, do that. En li koch. And then you start saying at some point, en li koch. You start picking it up from the kids. So when there's something very far away, meaning something that happened to you and you're trying to understand it, but in a sense it's far away, then it's hard to see because of all of the other things around it that confuse a person. And so it is also the vision, the light that spread out from the vision, al yidei zeh hu niklash. What is niklash with the kuf? I don't know.
It becomes...
Not chalash, niklash. I don't know. Ve'ein bo koach la'avi hadavar shero'eh letoch hamoach. And the person doesn't have the energy to bring that thing into their mind. Let's see. Mit kalesh. I don't know the word. I don't know the root. Okay. So let's do a quick overview of the lesson. I think we're going to pause from the text here. Maybe we'll read a little bit more. So we open up with the verse, and after these events, Hashem tested Avraham. Rebbe Nachman opens by anchoring the teaching in the moment after a spiritual high. It's after Avraham achieves so much that he's tested. That's really important to know that you're never going to reach a place of vacation when it comes to Hashem, even if you're on vacation. Even on vacation, Hashem will test you. You'll go to rent a car, and the credit card won't work, and it never happened to anyone. And then you get to the place you're supposed to stay, and that doesn't work out. And you say, wow, I'm on vacation. What's going on here? This is supposed to be fun and easy. Nope. Hashem is going to always test you. So the Torah uses the phrase Achar HaDevarim HaEileh after these things, and this opens the door to deeper reflections. What happens after spiritual milestones or moments of clarity? So every time you reach some spiritual milestone or moment of clarity, you're going to be raised up to a new level and tested again. And if you decide to not go to a higher level, you're going to be tested on your level. You're probably going to be pushed backwards until you push forward again, and that'll bring you to a new level. There is no way out of this game. And really, if you could look at life as a game, it would be a lot easier probably to live life, just in general. I know people like that. They look at money as a game. They look at many things as a game. They don't take these things too seriously. And I personally think it's admirable. I'm not like that. I take everything seriously. But it's something to work on. Rebbe Nachman brings the mystical principle of Or HaYashar, the direct light, and Or Choser, the reflected light, to frame spiritual sight and perception. Or Yashar is our consciousness reaching out to perceive something beyond us. And Or Choser, the returning light, is what comes back, what's received internally, which becomes knowledge, self-awareness, and a soulful imprint. Through sight, the metaphor becomes physical. We reach out to see something, and that very act creates a reaction which returns back to us, forming inner vision. Are you understanding what he's saying here? Okay. This mirrors our journey towards Hashem. We reach out and longing. Something inside receives what returned, and that encounter is imprinted on the heart. So then we're going to move to the next section. Rebbe Nachman quotes from Tikkunei Hazor. From the right side comes a mind, white like silver, the seed of Avraham, my beloved. Avraham represents the purest form of the spiritual mind, the white mind. That's the moach, what was it, kakesef or something like that. This is the mind of simplicity, trust, and love. Through self-nullification, bittul, Avraham becomes a vessel of pure light. His tests only refine this light. So when Hashem tests Avraham's pure light, it's only to refine the light. When Hashem tests us, it's also to refine the light. It makes me think about soup. So when you make soup, let's say I make a butternut squash soup. So I have onions. I don't serve soup at lunch on Shabbos, so we always have it at night. I have onions and butternut squash, and I cook them all. And then afterwards, I blend them. Take the immersion stick, and we blend them, and blend them, and blend them, and blend them. Now, if I really wanted to be a perfectionist, if I wanted like a Michelin star, 5-star, whatever, 3-star restaurant, then I take this sieve, which looks like a very fine mesh bowl like this, and I put it in there, and I take this wooden stick, and I go like this until I push it all the way through, and I do it like 3 or 4 times. Okay, let's take this as an analogy. And then you get this very silky, beautiful soup. I used to do this, but I just blend it now. Everyone will live with the rest. I used to have that thing, and I'd sit there and I'd go like this. I don't know, it was a little crazy when it came to the cooking. I probably still am. So what's the analogy? The analogy is that we start off with the early challenges, which is the chopping of the vegetables, or even the vegetable being pulled out from the ground. This is us. This is an analogy of us. And then the vegetable is peeled, and then the vegetable is cut, and then the vegetable is fried, and then the vegetable has got hot water poured on it, and then it's cooked until it mushes and it's almost nothing, and then it's blended, and then it's refined again and again and again and again until someone eats it. So that's my analogy for this Torah. Now, if a person says, oh, this is so painful, life was so good for me when I was sitting in the soil, and then they pulled me out, and then they peeled me and cut me and poured hot water on me and blended me and ate me and all these things, then your life is a life of suffering. But if you realize that all of this was to refine you and to reach a higher level of taking just these 2 vegetables from the ground and turning into something very, a delicacy, and we can take it even higher, and we can say it's being eaten by a Jew in Jerusalem on Shabbos, then it's even being elevated to a higher place. If you know that, then you will see things differently. You'll literally see things differently, but you won't see things differently with your eye, you'll see things differently with your mind. So that's the idea that he's giving over. We'll go over more of this next time. I don't want to spend too much time on it. So I'm going to tell a short lesson about Reb Zusha, because I think I told this story before. I'm pretty sure I told this story before. But for Yael, whenever I can find the story of Reb Zusha, I want to tell the story of Reb Zusha. Actually, I have a whole book from my wife's grandfather. When he passed away, he was a rabbi in Turkey, which fascinating thing. Turkey apparently is going to become our new enemy. Iran's going to become Turkey, and Turkey's going to become Iran. This is the new old thinking. This is Bernard Lewis. Bernard Lewis was a professor at Princeton. I studied at Princeton. I studied Middle Eastern Islamic studies, and he was there like as a retired professor in those years. So I did get to meet him, talk with him a little bit. He passed away a long time ago, but he was a great scholar. Don't worry, I'm getting back to where I started. And he had this idea that he wrote about, I think in the 70s, that one day Iran will become Turkey and Turkey will become Iran. And now what we're seeing is Turkey wants to take over the whole Middle East, and Iran might really just self-implode at some point. And Israel's enemy is going to be Turkey. The big problem with Turkey is it's a NATO member. So if Israel attacks Turkey, the United States is supposed to attack us back with all of Europe. Okay, we'll see what the next challenge holds for us. So how did I get to this? Because my wife's grandfather was a rabbi in Turkey. My father-in-law was born in Turkey. And when he was a rabbi also over here, he moved to Ashdod. He waited till everyone in the community left the community. It was in Çanakkale. This little Jewish community, the people that stayed, they were never going to leave. But he encouraged everyone to make Aliyah. He sent all of his kids on Aliyah when they were young. That's how my father-in-law ended up here. And then he passed away probably a couple of years after I was married, maybe 3 years after I was married. So we went to his house for the Shiva, and Noga's grandmother said, take whatever you want, take anything. So I looked, he had this massive library. I saw one book of stories of Reb Zusha, and I took the book. I think we still have it at home. I'll have to find it and start pulling out stories from there. So that's how I got into that whole thing. Okay. Another interesting note. I'm watching the time because I have like 5 minutes left. Another interesting note. I typed into Google Hasidic story. Just Hasidic story. I figured I'll find some Hasidic story. What shows up number 3? My podcast. I was really happy. I've done no SEO, no paid advertisement, no nothing, anything. It was Chabad, Ascent, and me. I was like, all right, Hashem. Although I did spend over 1,000 hours on this podcast, But I believe it's going to pay off when the books start coming out. And Motzei Shabbos, I'm working on the Baal Shem Tov book. So I'm on page 88 out of 347 pages. I think by the end of winter, the book will be done. Bezat Hashem. Okay, so here's the story. Reb Simcha of Borbraka, cited in Pri Megadim, once fell critically ill. And he was an opponent to the Hasidic rabbis and Hasidim in general. But he was very sick, and nobody could figure out how to help him. So his mother, who didn't care if they were Hasidim or not, went to Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhansk, who was considered one of the big rabbis, the biggest rabbi in Poland, and asked for a blessing for her son, the rabbi, to be healed. And he said, you're going to go back home. He gave her this whole prophecy. You're going to go back home. You're going to see that your son is weaker than he was before. But don't worry about it, because there's a big fair in your town, and the Puritz is going to host this big gala dinner. And he's going to invite all of the Puritzes from far and near, and they're going to bring the expert doctors as well. And there are going to be 3 expert doctors that come to this Poritz's party. And you're going to go to the party afterwards, and you're going to ask the doctors to come and look at your son. And they're going to look at your son, and they're going to say, there's nothing we can do, but don't worry. He says, all this is going to happen. Don't worry, because one of them is going to be walking in the marketplace. He's going to fall over and remember a medicine that can heal your son. And when your son is healed, I want you to go visit my brother, Rebbe Elimelech. Shalom Aleichem to Yaakov. Thanks for the nice message about the podcast. And also, Alice is joining us from Baltimore. So, exactly like the Rebbe said, it happened. She went home, her son was sick, the Puritz, the doctors, he fell, remembered the medicine, and the rabbi healed. So the mother said, well, now Rebbe Elimelech, so we have to go to Reb Zusha. And he said, no, first we're going to go to Rebbe Elimelech. First I have to thank Rebbe Elimelech. So they go to Rebbe Elimelech, and right away he looks at Rabbi Simcha, and he says, you didn't go to my brother. I can tell you didn't go to my brother. He said, yeah, I don't have a lot of energy. I was really sick, but it was important for me to come and thank you for your vision and your bracha and everything. He said, good. When you're healthy enough, go to my brother. So he makes his way eventually to Annapolis, where Reb Zusha lived. And he's just walking in the town. He doesn't know anyone. And someone comes over to him and says, Simcha, where have you been? You're supposed to come to my Shabbos table. He says to himself, how can anyone even know my name? I've never been here before. And who is this guy? And the guy disappears. So he says to some of the other Jews in town, who is that? They said, oh, that's our Rebbe, that's Reb Zusha. He says, oh, that's Reb Zusha. So he chases after him. He said, Reb Zusha, I'm here to see you. He said, I know you're here to see you. I said, I need you to come to my Shabbos table. He said, come on, let's go. Shabbos is coming. I want you to, did you study the Parsha this week? He said, yeah. He said, do you have questions about the Parsha? He said, yeah, of course, I always have questions. He said, you have questions in Gemara? What kind of questions do you have? He said, I have all kinds of questions. He said, great. You're going to come with me to the mikveh, and we're going to go in the mikveh together. So they go to the mikveh, and Zusha says, make sure you're in the mikveh the same time that Zusha is there. They come out of the mikveh, and Reb Zusha says to him, you still have questions? And he realizes that he has answers to all of the questions, going back from when he was like a teenager, from whatever Torah stuff he couldn't figure out. And he goes quickly to his room. He starts writing down all of the answers to all of the questions that he remembered. And then, of course, it's Shabbos, and he spends Shabbos with Reb Zusha. And afterwards, he stays and becomes a chassid of Reb Zusha. And, of course, this was all the plan that Rebbe Elimelech said, I'm going to help you to heal, but you have to go visit my brother Reb Zusha. And that's how the Chassidim made Chassidim in the old days. Now, I don't know, I guess everybody's got their stories. We don't have stories like that anymore. But at least we can still tell the stories. V'ezrat Hashem. Okay, let's play a little nigun. And shkoyach to everybody for watching and coming and sticking around. What are we going to sing this week? We play the same thing every time.